This week on The Sidetrack, we're joined by Sundance darling Brett Haley, who could very well claim the moniker feel-good filmmaker for his own laminated membership card to Hollywood. We'll join him and dig deep into his obsession for the Coen Brothers music masterpiece, Inside Llewyn Davis. That's this week on The Sidetrack. Welcome back to The Sidetrack. It's me, Paul Davidson, your host. I do have to say, I have to thank whoever it was that left a review on iTunes, that my voice was very calming for them. And so I'm doubling down this week on an extremely calm-sounding voice. This episode, by the way, can also be used as a 2-hour meditation. That's right. Close your eyes, be present. You don't need headspace. You don't need Matthew McConaughey walking you through a nighttime story to get you to sleep. In fact, all you need is me talking to you, at least according to some anonymous commentator on our iTunes page. Speaking of which, we are only as strong as our audience. So, if you aren't following us on Twitter at the Sidetrackcast, and if you're not following us on Instagram at the Sidetrackcast, please join us in our social circles and let all those in your social circle know about the podcast if you're into it. Now, this week I have the honor, and when I say that, I mean that every time I say that, but the honor of sitting down with writer-director Brett Haley. Brett has had quite the successful career thus far, and I don't expect it to slow down anytime soon here in the industry. Brett and I actually know each other from when I was running The Orchard, and we bought his film The Hero out of Sundance 2017. That was the indie film with Sam Elliott, who, by the way, I believe should have been nominated for an Oscar that year, but he had to wait for Bradley Cooper to bring him his movie on a platter, so to speak. Star is Born. But Brett has had quite a track record. I mean, he's been at Sundance 3 times with I'll See You in My Dreams, with The Hero, with Hearts Beat Loud. He just finished up two movies, 2 new features that premiered on Netflix, including most recently All Together Now. And he was announced most recently as the man who will be helming the prequel to Grease, Summer Lovin. So we're going to talk about that and dig deep into his process, into how Sundance was for him. I'm personally interested, having been on one side of the table, to get a little bit of insight from him into how that feels, how that works, and what are the things that maybe he hasn't shared before about that experience. In addition, I do want to ask him a bit about working in the Netflix structure and the Netflix machine, because having had 2 films already premiere on the platform, I'm sure he has quite a bit of stories to share about that experience. But most importantly, we'll be talking to him about the movie that he recorded a feature-length audio commentary for, the Coen Brothers' Inside Llewyn Davis, which is one of my all-time favorite films, and I'm excited to not only talk to him about it, but sit down and listen to his feature-length audio commentary. It's something that Brett is always laser-focused on is music in movies and how music is used. And if you've seen any of his films, you've noticed how important and pertinent music is for the narratives that he directs. So we're going to talk about that, and we are going to go to that interview right now with writer-director Brett Haley here on The Sidetrack. So here we are with feel-good movie maker Brett Haley. Brett, how are you?
Trying to feel good, man.
You know, right off the bat, I mentioned this in the opening of the podcast. In my experience, every Sundance that I went to where you had a film, and just to be clear, like that was it 15, 16, and 17, or 15, 17, and 18? What were the 3 years?
I think it was 15, 17, 18.
All right, so I wasn't at 15, which was I'll See You in My Dreams, right?
Correct.
So on 17 and 18, Sundance, I mean, look, Sundance is always trying to make a statement. Sundance had a lot of socially conscious films, a lot of deep, dramatic, tough to watch movies, all well crafted. But it seemed to me that every year you were at Sundance, your film was always the film that people were like, if you want to see, it's like the audience favorite. It's the movie that'll make you feel good. It give you an escapist moment for 2 hours. That always seemed to be the movies that, at least prior to some of the stuff that you're doing with Netflix, because one of them isn't necessarily a feel-good movie. But was that an intention for you? Where does that come from?
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly not a planned thing. Like I just make movies from the gut, from the heart and from the gut, and submitted them to Sundance like everybody else, hoping. I hope they like it. I hope it gets in. And I was very lucky to have 4 movies that I've submitted to Sundance, 3 have gotten in. And I've only submitted 4 times. The first movie was a $5,000 feature called The New Year. That was before Next was a thing. And I remember I got a call from Trevor Groff just being like, hey man, I really like your movie. Like, it's not getting into the festival, but I really liked it. And I just wanted to call you and tell you that I liked it. And I've reminded Trevor of that story over and over again because it meant a lot to me at the time. It really kept me going. And Sundance has been such a big part of my career. I love
was
that.
Was that the New Year? The New Year was the one that he said he loved, but didn't get in? The New Year was
the one, yeah. He called me and he said, look, man, I really like this film, but it's not going to get in the festival. Like, there's just not a place for a movie like this. But I really enjoyed it, and I wanted to tell you personally. And I thought, wow, that's really cool. And then actually, I was pretty chill with it, and just kept working towards making another film, and eventually got there and got in. And I don't think about I can't think about what I don't know what people want, or what Sundance wants, or what the indie world wants, or what the studio world wants. Right. I just never thought that way. I can only think about what I want to make, what I want to spend my time doing. And I think my movies, while I guess you could describe them as feel good, I think some are more feel good than others, as you mentioned. I think that they all deal with very real things in life. They all have very dramatic things and real, grounded human things that happen. Yeah, I guess they aren't just like fluff. They're earned.
Well, and if you're going to spend that amount of time of your life, I mean, you're spending at least 1 to 2 years of your life, including the release and promotion and all of the work that happens after the film is done on a movie. You better enjoy it. You better like what you're doing.
Yeah, you want to live in that world, right? And I think it's really important that you think about the world that you're living in. And for me, it's like the movie ideas that I've had have come really organically. Like the idea for I'll See You in My Dreams, it just came to me. I can't even describe it. I was like, oh, this like widow's dog dies, and then she starts dating again, and she's 70. Why at 30 years old that came to me, and I thought but it was about the themes that I wanted to explore. And then I met Sam Elliott on that film, and that made me want to make The Hero. And I was going to make a Western with Sam, and then I was like, you've done a Western. What can we give you that you've not done? So The Hero came about that way, and we got to kind of have our cake and eat it too. And then I love music and musicals, and that, and The Hearts Beat Loud came to me that way. And
well, it's interesting. You're looking at your films in a way as kind of like the cinematic version of the 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game, because there's an element or something that occurs on the previous movie that kind of is the door that opens to the next one, right? Now, I don't know, perhaps on I'll See You in My Dreams was an idea, but then you make that movie, Sam is in that movie, you have a connection with Sam, you do The Hero that Nick Offerman is in, you love working with Nick, you do a movie with Nick Offerman. I mean, there's clearly each experience begets the next one.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to my whole philosophy around filmmaking, which is work begets work. For me, it's all about the work, and I actually talk about that a lot in the podcast. In my commentary, rather. For me, I like to do it, and so if it works with somebody, you're inspired by somebody. I had the idea for Hearts Beat Loud. Mark and I did. We worked with Nick on The Hero, and I was like, that's our dad. I remember his last day of shooting on The Hero. We're shooting probably one of the favorite scenes I've ever shot, which is the audition scene in The Hero with Sam and Nick out on the deck. Just an incredible performance from these two guys. And I remember wrapping that, and that was Nick's last day. And I just remember saying to Houston King, my producer, and Mark Bash, my co-writer, I was like, Nick is our dad for the next movie I want to make. So it's really nice to have those connections. And I think I certainly wouldn't have, I think from All the Bright Places to All Together Now was a really smooth transition too, just because Netflix knew me, liked working with me. I liked working with them. And that was a nice, smooth transition there too. So I think, again, like just, if you work hard and you'll get more work. That's the theory.
Well, it's interesting. You, if I look at your kind of the trajectory of outside of film school, right? So after film school, at the end of film school, you do the New Year, right? Like that's the end of film school. Is that correct?
Kind of. I worked at a restaurant for a long time in New York. And then I PA'd a little bit here and there, which I really hated. Yeah. Then I got a director's assistant job. I worked for Terry George on a movie. And then I worked for John Hillcoat for a while. Wow. We did The Road together and then a bunch of other small stuff. And I loved working for both those guys and learned a lot, got kind of a front row seat. And then I made the New Year. I made the New Year after I was working with John. So
if you do research, there are three things that I want to get the answer to, because the internet, clearly there's some kind of conspiracy going on with these three pieces of information. First, if you search your name on Google under the information card of who you are and what you do, it lists genre as your genre is dance and electronic. Do we know where this comes from?
Oh yeah.
Is that just they just know that that's the music you like?
I mean, there's a guy and I believe he's somewhere in the UK.
Yeah.
He probably hates me because his DJ name is DJ Brett Haley.
Okay.
I kid you not. I suppose that's his name, and that's the name he decided. He's got a ton of followers. And so I guess Google just put us together. Put
okay.
DJ Brett Haley, dance electronic, and Brett Haley, the filmmaker, together. And there you go. I am not hiding a secret dance electronic music career.
So perhaps perhaps just like the doors from one movie to the next, that piece of information will impart the next question, which is when you look on Wikipedia is not quite sure if you were born in 83 or 84 and attributes both years to your birth. Why is that?
Wait, it says 19... What does it
83/84. Were you born in two stages? What happened there?
I have no idea. Last I checked, Wikipedia is, run by... You're going to have to jump in there as an editor, I guess, Paul. The answer is 1983. I was born in August of 83, so there you go.
What was your birthday in August?
August 17th.
You're kidding me. You're kidding me. That's my birthday.
Get out of here.
We were born on the same day in August.
We didn't know this about each other?
We didn't know this. That's crazy. I mean, I'm just a few years older than you, but August 17th.
There you go, man. And Robert De Niro has our birthday.
Yes.
Which is a great person to have a birthday with. And my new discovery, other than you, who has an August 17th birthday, is one of my favorite musical artists, Phoebe Bridgers. She is also August 17th.
This is crazy.
Which is awesome. Yeah.
Okay. So this is
that's why we get along so well, Paul.
I know. This is crazy. Okay.
Leos love other Leos.
It's really true. Well, we all, I don't know. We all love being the center of attention. We all are super outgoing, and we all like to get shit done, right?
Exactly. All
right. So those were two questions. The third is kind of more serious, but it's tied to. So you make the New Year for $5,000, 2010, right? You show up. It's the next time you show, or the first time you show up at Sundance is 2015. So what are you make this movie? I mean, I haven't seen the film. I've seen the trailer. I think it's only available on one.
I think it's on I think you can get it on iTunes.
Can you get it on iTunes?
I think I fought to get it available for rental and purchase on iTunes or Amazon. I think.
When I saw the trailer, I just watched the trailer. It's the one thing of yours I haven't seen the full movie of. I was like, okay, this is all going to take place in a bowling alley. That's how he did it for $5,000. But the varied locations on this movie, how do you do this movie for $5,000? Maybe it's what you shot it on. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny because when we were talking about what to do for the commentary, I talk a lot about that movie actually in the commentary.
Yeah.
Because really what I'm talking about is the Coen Brothers and how they just went and made a fucking movie. You know, from Hell or High Water, they made Blood Simple the way they wanted to do it. And I'm like all about that. I'm all about like, hey, if you're a director, go direct a movie. You know, if you're a writer, write it, whatever.
Right.
For me, it was in my hometown of Pensacola, Florida, and I knew that I could get certain things for free. Right. So I don't want to repeat what I say in the commentary, but basically I just begged, stealed, and borrowed everything on that movie, got everything for free. And we just did it. We just made a movie in like 10 or 12 days or something and just didn't. There were no bells and whistles, man. Right. We had like maybe one Kino flow and the actors were booming when they weren't on camera. And it was so gnarly. It was so
How many days
quality.
did it take to shoot? What was how many days?
Like 12 days, like
12
days tops.
Amazing.
Something like that. And I'm still very proud of that film. I think that film works. Like, am I like, oh my God, that film's amazing. It doesn't, you know, but it's a part of my journey and a part of my growth. And I'm very proud of doing that film. And it started something, you know, for me.
So there's a window of time then between 2010 and 2015 where you waltz into Park City with I'll See You in My Dreams. What are those the 5 years you're working for directors? What's happening during those years?
No, in those 5 years, I was working for a documentary production company.
Okay.
I ended up going back to New York after making the New Year, doing the festival rounds with that. I ended up going back to New York and working as a night assistant editor for a company called Part 2. And I logged all the tapes with a friend who worked there as well, or a guy who became my friend. And it was just the two of us in this office, kind of brownstone building in Brooklyn. And we just logged tapes from about 6 p.m. to about 2 a.m.
Sounds like Bright Lights Big City.
Office. Yeah, it was crazy. We would deliver cuts and, you know, clean up stuff and do string outs and log tapes. And, you know, we just did that. I did that for like years. And at that company, I worked my way up, believe it or not, to directing the shows that I was assistant editing for.
Oh, wow.
And that just goes to show you the kind of personality that I am, where I was like, hey, I know I'm like your assistant editor, but what I really want to do is direct. And I should, you know, you should let me do that. And I actually convinced these people who are still friends to this day to let me direct, you know, their Animal Planet shows, which is what I did. I ended up going out. I directed a show called Off the Hook Extreme Catches, which I think turned into No Limits. Yep. It was kind of an adventure show with a host. And we went out and did all this crazy shit. I directed that for 2 years. I actually, in the middle of, I had to go make I'll See You in My Dreams for no money. I didn't get paid anything to make I'll See You in My Dreams. So I went out on my own dime, made I'll See You in My Dreams in LA. And from wrapping that, I went to the Redwood Forest to keep shooting my show because I was broke.
Wow.
And the new season was starting. So I went and just rolled right in. And then I think I wrapped in like March of 2014, and then I couldn't start editing I'll See You in My Dreams till like July. I remember that because I was working that whole time.
Shooting this? I'll See You in My Dreams. There's a financier behind that. You just weren't getting paid up front. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I sort of, with the budget as low as it was, and it was extremely low, I was like, I'm not going to take a salary, and my producers didn't take a salary.
Got it.
So that we had the money to give other people salaries. So we just took the hit and, you know, took the points on the back end for the sale.
Yeah.
And said, well, hopefully we can sell it and see some money on the back end. So we just sort of believed in it and said, well, you know, we just want to make this thing.
So where were you when you got the call? And what were you doing, and what was that moment like when you got into Sundance?
It was a big moment. It was really funny because I had quit a job that day.
Oh, wow.
I was editing I was working for I won't say what company, not the company that I came up with.
Right.
It was another company, and I was just like, I needed money, and I was editing some show, some terrible like faux, I don't know, one of those like Southern like treasure hunt shows or some shit, like just something awful, like something just soul sucking. But I was doing it, and I was just trying to make the best of it and earn a living. I live in Brooklyn. I got to pay the rent. So I was doing my thing. We had submitted the film, no clue when we were going to hear back.
Right.
They always say, oh, you hear back before
Thanksgiving?
You hear back before Thanksgiving
right.
if you got in. And it's like Thanksgiving's around the corner. I'm like, and I ended up.
So you quit your job.
Yeah, long story short, I quit my job. I walked out. I literally walked out. I didn't even tell my director I was quitting. I was so fed up with everything on this show, long story short, it was a mess, that I just walked out. And I texted my producer, and I said, I'm so sorry, but I'm out. I've never quit a job in my life. I've never walked out. It was that bad.
Okay.
I walked out, went home. My wife was there. She was being very understanding and very cool. She was like, don't worry about it, man. We'll figure it out. We had a wonderful dinner together, some great wine, and I got the call at dinner.
Wow.
Well, I was sitting there. I was a little buzzed, and I got a call, and it was the Sundance Film Festival. And I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit that it was a crazy ride of emotions, and I wept and, was so relieved and excited. And then a whole new series of fears and unknowns begin. It's like a whole new chapter begins at that point.
Yeah. Are you one of those? A lot of creative people have or operate from a mentality of it's never good enough. And let me just put that in context. You're living in a space and you're like, I just want to direct. So you direct your animal TV shows. You want to write. You want to do your own feature. You want to get into Sundance. You get into Sundance. When you get into Sundance, are you the kind of person that can live like they're telling us to in this world we live in today? Live in the present moment and enjoy that? Or 5 minutes later, are you already focused on, is it going to sell? And then once it sells, is the release going to be right? Is it going to do the right box office? Like, how do you internalize and operate in that space?
I think I'm unfortunately more the latter that you mentioned. I think there are moments of joy and moments of bliss along that journey.
Right.
Along that journey, rather. I mean, I remember the night. It's like huge peaks and valleys, man. That sort of what I've found looking back on every movie I've put out, and now it's been 6 movies.
Right.
Every movie I put out has such peaks and such valleys equally that they all even out in some capacity. They all flatline in some capacity when you do the math. They're like a solid 6.5 to 7, out of 10. Like they all average out. I don't know why that is, but there's such huge ebbs and flows. Like I remember getting a standing ovation at Sundance in Eccles Tuesday, but it was Tuesday night and everyone had left. And I didn't know that. I was so green, and Sundance was doing this new thing where they were showing premieres later, trying to get people to stay the Monday and Tuesday. Yeah, and as a buyer that nobody stays past Sunday. Right. And so Tuesday I go in like, oh, here we go, man. And we go and we premiere, and it's a huge hit. The laughs, the tears, standing ovation for Blythe Danner. We get up there, have this amazing experience. I'm on cloud 9. We go to the party, and I'm like, okay, so who's made an offer? And they're like, nobody. Nobody's here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Nobody's here. They're like, no one is here. No one has seen the film. We have to send a link. Right. I'm like, you're kidding me. No one was in the room to see that this movie can play theatrically. And they're like, no. And they obviously, I couldn't have enjoyed it if they would have told me that beforehand. So I'm appreciative in a way that I got to enjoy what I did get to enjoy. And then it was a week of, oh my God, people are just watching a link of a movie.
Not the way you want people to watch it.
It worked out. Bleecker Street bought it. The movie is my most successful box office movie to date, which isn't saying much because the box office has changed.
Yeah. What did it do? Like much. 8 or 12?
What did it make?
It did like 8 million at the box, right?
Yeah, it did like almost 8 million. Yeah, and it only was in like 120 theaters
That's
max.
huge.
So it just kept making money like in these smaller things. And I didn't know that was an audience, like older people would come see it or whatever. I mean, I remember the Night of the Heroes, another good example, where I went to my party and got my trade reviews. And I remember the Rap in particular sort of hated the hero. They hate, I rarely get good trade reviews. I think just because I'm like you said, I think my movies are kind of heartfelt and kind of more sincere than maybe they are looking for.
Right.
Anyway, I got like torn apart by the Rap and got like kind of a mixed review in the Hollywood Reporter. And I was devastated. For some reason, I was really upset.
Yeah.
Couldn't enjoy the party. Kind of left the party early, went to bed, and I got a call at like 3 a.m. from Houston King, my producer, saying, "Hey man, we have a great offer. Like, don't worry, everything's great." So again, these ebbs and flows, this up and down.
Was that our offer?
That was your offer,
yeah.
man. Yeah.
Well, because it was at the library, right? It premiered at the library.
Had a great screening. I was like over the moon.
I remember us walking, my team and I walking out of the library in the snow, saying, "Run the numbers, start to put the numbers together."
Yeah,
because it was
it
awesome.
was great, and you guys were definitely the best fit and the most passionate for it, and it was a huge success for us.
Yes,
that's my biggest success sale wise at a festival. And again, you get these reviews and you're like, "Oh my God, my world's over." And you're like, "Oh no, but you just made the biggest sale of your career." Everything evens out, and everything really, if you can be in the present, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
you go through the system, and as long as you're working hard, these things in the moment feel huge. We watch the tomato meter. We watch the box office mojo when box office comes back. You get the call from Netflix about how many people watched your movie. All this shit matters, quote unquote, but it actually doesn't. And what really matters is you just staying in the moment and going, "I'm just going to like keep working."
Yeah.
Like I had already finished All Together Now when All the Bright Places came out. Right. I was like so far beyond it. I was like, "Huh? Oh yeah, that. Oh, that's nice." Anyway, I got to get back to work.
Well, it's interesting because when you talk about there's like 3 distinct chapters for you that I see, right? Like you make your first film for 5K, you get the great call from Groth. It doesn't get into Sundance, but it it starts a certain chapter, and then kind of the next set in my mind is the run of Sundance movies. You have 3 different movies at Sundance. They're theatrical releases. They're indie kind of like hits in that space, and then I think you kind of got ahead of look, streamers it was all happening and it was growing. I mean, we're at a place right now where who knows what's going to happen with theatrical. I think we'll get back there. But then you kind of go to this chapter of Netflix movies. So, and by the way, like I say that knowing that, and I want to talk about, that you're doing the prequel to Grease. Is that Paramount? That's Paramount. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be, that's going to be something big. But, you and theatrical, I have to believe, but with respect to, you have this chapter at Netflix, and I'm super curious to know from your perspective, knowing so many people have worked at Netflix, and you can say whatever, say what you can say, but the experience of working with traditional distributors is one thing, the strategy, the process, marketing, assets, all those things. Then you go into Netflix, and I've talked to actors and producers who go in there, and there's a whole different level of education for filmmakers and creative folks of how they approach marketing a movie, the creative aspect of, developing something. What was the biggest surprise for you going into that experience, that machine of Netflix that you had not experienced in the traditional space?
I've really enjoyed working for Netflix, and I'm doing another movie with them.
That's great.
Love the experience. I'm doing a movie called 36 Questions that Mark and I are writing right now for them. And Fred Berger is producing that. And I'm really excited about that film, and they're the perfect partners for this film, in my opinion. Yeah. And so that'll be my 3rd movie with them. And I hope to make, I like working for Netflix, and I like the system there. it does take, it's so radically different from the indie system of making your movie and selling it. And I'll tell you what the biggest difference is the aftermath. When you're doing a small indie theatrical release or any theatrical release, the trailer comes out 3 months before the movie.
That's right.
Not a week,
Right.
Literally, I remember them saying, yeah, the trailer will come out about a week or 2 weeks before the movie comes out. I'm like, what? They're like, trust me. Nobody wants to watch the Netflix trailer that they want to be able to watch. They want instant gratification.
They want it now.
And we've learned it. They have all this data, and you just kind of have to put your faith that they know how to market their movies. The reason that they can do what they can budgetarily is that they don't have a huge marketing budget. Netflix movies market themselves.
That's right.
They are organically integrated into our world. When a movie comes out, it just organically attaches itself to millions of people over the course of either a weekend or a week, or over the course of years, where it can grow and grow and grow. It's so fascinating. But it's the complete opposite of like the press day and this and that.
That's
like
right.
Everything you do leading up to a more traditional release, it's completely different on the back end.
Well, you know what? I remember when we worked on The Hero, the goal was like, okay, well, maybe we'll have a teaser poster and a theatrical poster, and you look at hundreds of iterations to land on that one, that glowing shot of Sam Elliott. That's our poster. And the stories I hear from so many people inside of Netflix is like, sometimes they sit you down and they say, here's like the 13 different versions of art we're going to use, and there's not one poster, and it's algorithms deciding what they're showing to what people, and it's crazy. Did you have that sit down?
Yeah, it's a completely different world.
Yeah.
And you have to, as a filmmaker, I would highly recommend, you don't have to do anything, but I would highly recommend you sit back and trust the process. Yeah. I'm a data person, a science-driven person. They know more than I do.
Right.
And I have to trust that they're going to do what's right. We had a title change on my last movie that was due to Netflix saying, we just think this is going to be confusing as a Netflix title.
Was this All Together now?
Yeah, All Together Now. The book, it's based on a book by Matthew Quick called Sort of Like a Rock Star.
That's right.
And I like that title, Sort of Like a Rock Star.
So what was the issue with the title?
And that was going to be the title. The issue was they thought people were going to take that literally. The rock star is not a literal thing in the movie. It's like, oh, hey man, you're a rock star. Like, you're great.
Right.
Not you're an actual rock star. And they thought people, Ali'i, a singer, known for Moana, maybe they go, oh, this is about a girl who, and the director of Hearts Beat Loud, oh, it's like a band movie. It's about a girl who wants to be in a band, who wants to be a rock star. That's not at all what the movie is. So people on Netflix want to click on the thing and get what you're selling them.
Yeah.
And Netflix knows how to sell. They know how to get it in front of people. I doubt All Together Now popped up on your Netflix feed.
Well, it didn't pop up. It didn't. It popped up on my girls' feed who are in 6th and 8th grade.
There you go.
I had to search it. I knew I was looking for it, so I searched it and added it to my list. But
that's by design.
Right.
They will. It'll pop up on your feed sometime else, or maybe never. But and you're like, well, it shouldn't be on everybody's feed, and they're like, no, it shouldn't. And you're like, okay, I trust you. Trust me, Netflix wants the views. They want all that stuff. They're going to do it right, and they have more data and more information. Which information and data is money, is power, is knowledge. You have to just sort of trust the system there, and just let go. It's a great thing of just being like, well, the movie's out. That's it, man.
But that wasn't hard for you? You seem to be, I mean, to your point, you love the data. You love to be in the weeds on the process. Was that hard for you to let go?
Yeah, but it's different because you realize I wouldn't be surprised if opening weekend, quote unquote, of All the Bright Places, more people saw that film than have ever seen one of my films. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's a different level that you're dealing with. You're talking about however many millions of subscribers having access to your film at the stroke of midnight Pacific time on the Thursday night. It's insane into Friday. It's insane. And so it's not the same level of expectations. And Netflix doesn't release their numbers. It isn't like, oh my God, what's the box office going to be? What's the deadline going to say? And are we a success or a failure? It doesn't matter, because Netflix doesn't put filmmakers in that position.
Yeah.
They don't come out publicly unless it's good news. And even if it is good news, sometimes they don't. They only really do the really big movies.
Right.
They'll kind of say like, oh, hey, by the way, so many people watch The Old Guard. Just letting you know. All right, see you later. Like they don't need it. They don't need it. They're a whole different ecosystem. And frankly, I really love. I kind of. It's you just have to wire your brain differently. You're gonna make a movie for Netflix. Just get ready for that. I'm sure like Noah Baumbach and David Fincher, I'm sure they like the sort of, I'm done now. Here's the movie. Goodbye. I'm going on to the next thing. Like that's what I think Netflix is really good for. While a theatrical, a big thing, you're having to continually invest. Oh, how to do this weekend? Oh God, the stress that you and I went through just watching, weekend numbers. Oh, we're expanding to this many theaters, and we got to get this average, and it's fun, but it's stressful as hell.
No, I mean the freedom of not having to worry about per screen averages and expansions and dropping, where your trailer's playing, and did we spend through half of our digital? I mean, having an owned and operated channel with 50 million domestic subscribers. That's amazing. So now Altogether now came out on August 28th. Is that right?
Yeah.
August 28th. So it's just a couple weeks as we're recording this. It'll be a few more when people hear the show. But so it comes out that weekend. What do you hear from Netflix in a general way at the end of that weekend? Do you get a call and do they say,
no,
looks great?
No, you don't.
Yeah.
You don't. I mean, you can ask. I learned on my last one, you basically, I think you get a 10 or 2 week call, something like that, and they update you, and then you get like a month call, and then you get a year call.
Okay.
I believe that's what it is. So
well, clearly,
they kind of tell you.
Clearly, if you're doing,
and they don't tell you everything. They tell you what they feel like telling you.
Clearly, if you're doing a third movie, you're doing okay over there.
I love it over there, and I love. I tell you the other thing. There's great executives over at Netflix.
Yeah.
There are smart, great, talented people who have good opinions, and they're good people who I think have good taste. And I like working with them, and I'm working with some people that I've worked with before.
Are you working with like Ian and Matt Levin and those guys?
I worked with Ian, was a big part of Altogether Now, and Mandy Beckner was awesome. She was a huge part of Altogether Now. She was my main executive, and then I worked with Sean Barney on All the Bright Places, and he's back for this new 136 Questions, which I'm doing with Ivana Lombardi. Like they're just a good group, a really nice group of people. I like their press team. I like their PR team. The people over there, they're nice. Netflix takes care of their people.
Yeah.
They're happy to be working at that company. Nobody's like jaded over there. It's a great gig. They treat their employees really well. So everybody's really happy and excited to be there. And I'm excited to keep working with them. And I think that I'd be happy to keep making movies with them. And my relationship with them is great. I also just want to, me, I want to perform.
Sure.
Like when you invested in The Hero, when your company at the time invested in The Hero, I wanted so badly for it to do well, not just for me, but for you.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like you invested in me as an artist, and you believed in my vision, and you put your money where your mouth is, and now I want that to come back to you. And so I feel it all when it comes to that stuff. So I'm always like, God, I hope the movie does well. I hope like at your internal meetings at Netflix, they're going, hey, great job. This really turned out for us. That makes me feel good.
All right. So I want to ask you about Grease, but one thing I want to ask you before Summer Lovin is when you're at Sundance and festivals and people want to buy your movies, what was you don't have to tell me who it was, but what was the biggest lie or the biggest piece of bullshit that anybody ever said to you in one of those meetings that you knew just was not true, and immediately put in perspective the people that you were facing across the room? Anything like
You
that?
mean like buyers and like
Yeah,
that
like
kind
your
of
city.
situation?
Yeah, they're selling themselves. Like, was there ever any moment where you were just like, "Oh my gosh, what you just said? There's no way that this is it's true. I don't believe."
I got to be honest. I got very lucky / unlucky.
Yeah.
That there was never a bidding war for my movies.
Yeah.
Ever. There was never like a hot, oh my God, every studio in town wants it. Every studio in Park City is knocking down the door.
Right.
It worked out though, in the sense that the movies found the right homes organically.
Yeah.
There was a few offers here and there. It was things, but it was never a situation where I was like, ugh, these people that we gotta, like when I met with you and your team, I was like, these guys get it. They care. They know the movie.
Yeah.
They're it.
Yep.
I don't even fucking care if there are other offers. This is the company I want to go with.
Yeah.
You get a feeling. I felt that way. Bleecker Street was done over the phone, and then Gunpowder and Sky, they just had so much passion and so much drive to make it work. I was like, I just believe in this. We could go with a slightly bigger distributor, but I don't know. There's something about this company that wants to make it work. I like that.
I get it.
I like that. So we just got lucky. I never really was sitting there going, I think the Hearts Beat Loud year was a really tough year for sales for some reason. And you look back at that year, it had some of the best fucking movies coming out that year.
That's right.
You had like Sorry to Bother You and Blind Spotting and Monsters and Men, and like just incredible films that did not make huge splashes. It was a very slow year.
Yeah.
And I think it had to do with Amazon and Netflix sort of not really buying that year for some reason.
Well, it also came off of a year
really hot.
The previous year, people had spent a shit ton of money and shit the bed, and so people came into that year.
People get that buyer's remorse, or they're a little fearful. But then the next year, I remember it was huge. It was like Late Night and Brittany Runs a Marathon and Honey Boy, like really big sales from Amazon, and then that drove the market up.
Yeah,
and I thought, so every year is a total crapshoot, and I think you're walking up Main Street, man, and it's freezing cold, and you're on that long hill, and that week can be really tough, dude.
Yeah.
And I tell you, it just, you can just be like, I don't get it. I don't get what's going on. I remember meeting with other filmmakers and actors, and everyone that year was just going, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
No one is making an offer. And then the next year, boom, 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 offer. So every year is so unique, but there's no better film festival, I think.
No, and I just hope that all of, we get through the COVID thing, and we will.
Too,
we'll get through it, and we'll get back to sitting in movie theaters. It'll just take a little time, but
it's going to take some time, and I'll be really curious. I'm really rooting for Sundance. I just, I love that festival, and I'm really rooting. I think that the people that they've hired over there as the new blood are just amazing, and I know them from my time there, and I'm really rooting for them and hoping that I think we will get back to normal.
Yeah.
It's just, it is going to take a little bit of time. It is what it is at this point, not in the Trump way. It is what it is, but it is what it is. And we're going to get through it. We're going to fight through it. And movies are going to come back.
I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but I've just said it to people who are struggling with going through this moment. And my mother sent me something. She sent me an email that said, if you were born in 1900 and lived to be 75, you would have gone through multiple world wars, a pandemic, a depression, this generation, generation who are living in their, call it 20s to 50s. I mean, we've been pretty lucky. So hopefully we can sit on our asses and watch TV and movies and get through it,
Look, kind of full circle, it takes you back to the feel-good nature. It's like, I think that my movies, again, are earned. They come through in the end. There's hope in the end, right? There's some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. The journey can be difficult, but it's always worth it.
Yeah.
I think that's the message that I'm sending. And I think we're going to say that now. And I get down. I get very scared about the future of specifically our country right now.
Yeah.
And I was lamenting to my brother, who's you know, my best friend, brother, father figure, hero. You know, I look up to this guy. His name's Joshua Ferris. He's a really phenomenal novelist, just incredible. And I was sort of lamenting, you know, sort of saying I was feeling a bit demoralized by where we are and what's going to happen with the election. And there's just so much drama every day. You wake up and you just feel this immense weight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my brother said, he texted me this. He said, remember the words Victor Laszlo has for the cynical Rick at the end of Casablanca. Quote, welcome back to the fight. This time, I know our side will win, unquote. And I was really moved by that. And I thought, you know what? We do have to fight. We do sometimes have to get over feeling sorry for ourselves and do what we can to make the world a better place. It's not easy, and it's never going to be easy, but we can't quit. We can't quit the fight.
You can't. There's no option to do that. So, okay. I want to ask you about Grease. Then we're going to talk about Llewyn Davis. So this I don't even know where to start. Summer Lovin, the prequel to Grease. I personally love Grease, but I am a big Grease 2 fan with Maxwell Caulfield and you know, what is it? Cool Rider, I think is the great song there.
Yeah. It's a great song, yeah.
Where does this opportunity come from? What is we don't have to like spend an hour on it, but you know, give us the high level. How did this happen?
So let me just say up front, like I don't know what I can and can't say creatively. So I'm just going to say nothing about the creative.
Fine.
I can tell you that this was something that came through a general meeting that I had with Isaac Klausner, who ended up being the producer of All Together now, and he works at Temple Hill. Temple Hill is one of the production companies on Summer Lovin.
Right.
So, and then at the end of our lunch, we had just met, and he was a fan of my work, and I loved Temple Hill and what they had done, and was just excited to kind of find something with them. He sort of just in casual passing was like, oh, and we've got the prequel to Grease. It's called Summer Lovin'. And I was like, whoa, hold on a second. I was like, I want to do that. And he's like, really? And I'm like, oh man, I'm a huge musical person. I love musicals. I grew up doing them, and I love Grease. And that sounds so fun because unlike a lot of sequels or IP stuff, this actually has a reason for existing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because Grease in many ways feels like a sequel. Like they're like, these like they're missing the love story. Like this is like the second act of their love story.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, so that's brilliant. I'm like, you're going to do like when Danny and Sandy meet for the first time? That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is such opportunity.
Yeah.
To do something really fun and exciting. And so that was a long time ago. And it went, and I tried to write the script, that didn't work out. I was just trying to be involved in any way that I could.
Right.
And I remember we were making All Together now. I was kind of like, hey, how's Grease going? How's Summer Lovin' going? And they were sort of like, you know, I don't, you know, it's not going to be you, man. Pretty much, you know, like, and it just sort of worked out that I think we really enjoyed working together, and it was nice to have it in there. And then it came down to, look, what's your take? Yeah. It always comes down to what's your take.
But what's your take based on the script? There was a script written, right?
Yeah. What's your take based on what we're trying to do here?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And what do you think? You know, and like, how can you know, and the thing is, I'm working with incredibly smart producers, with Eric Feig, who did La La Land, and Marty Bowen, who's, you know, done, you know, First Man and the Twilight movies. And you're working with guys that really know this stuff, and a really talented team of executives, and you're dealing with great people at Paramount. I mean, there's smart people around this project, and they know what they want out of this thing. And I think I just showed up with an enthusiasm and a vision that I really believed in, that I felt like you know, if you let me kind of do my Brett Haley thing on Grease, I can sort of satisfy, I think, the Grease fans with being true to what Grease is, but also take it a little bit further and deepen it a little bit and give it a little bit of heart and widen the horizons, if you will, of what that series or IP or whatever you want to call it can be. because I think it really has unlimited
Oh my
potential.
gosh. Think about the install base of, the people that have seen Grease. I think I may have told you this, but our family were friends with Michael Tucci, who was Sonny in the original Grease.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I hope for his sake you include all of the originals.
I mean, the movie has touched in some way pretty much every person alive. It's iconic, and I don't take it lightly. I'm not sitting here going, okay, yeah, whatever. I'm like, oh my God, this is an honor and a big, big deal. And I want to say everybody on our team feels that way.
That's great.
Everybody on our team cares a whole lot.
Okay, so we've covered every aspect of your life, and now let's talk briefly, because you have a whole commentary about Llewyn Davis, and people will be able to dig into that. But just at a high level for you, why this movie? Where were you the first time you saw it, and what is it about the film that applies to you, your craft? Just at a high level, so people understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, I mean, I think. Look, I saw it in the theaters when it came out. I'm a huge Coen Brothers fan. I don't miss their movies in the theater if they're theatrically released. This movie was devastating for me in the best of ways. And it moved me. It felt more human than I love the Coen Brothers, but they can be a little distant of their characters. Yeah. They're not exactly getting into the deep humanity of their characters often. They're very sort of stylized and a little cold at times, but in really good ways.
Sure.
That's not a criticism. Llewyn Davis has this messy humanistic quality at the center of it, specifically Llewyn himself and how messy of a character he is, how damaged he is. And I love that they tell this story about that guy. They don't tell it about Bob Dylan, the guy who made it. Yeah. They tell it about the guy who's trying to make it and who's miserable and falling apart, who maybe could have made it in some other capacity. Like, there's so much humanity in Llewyn Davis. On top of it, it's how they use music. And I talk a lot about how they use the music in the film.
Yeah.
And just how it carries the journey, the look, the feeling, that section in the middle, that weird, it's almost nightmarish road trip movie in the center of the film.
Yeah.
It is just a stunning piece of cinema that has stuck with me, and I go back to it often. It also has one of, in my opinion, the all-time great performances in Oscar Isaac, all time. I'd put it up there with Marion Cotillard in Rust and Bone, and I mean, those are two of my favorite performances ever. I think he's unfucking believable in this part.
So let me just be clear on something. You would rank his performance in this movie above Star Wars. Is that what you're saying?
I think he got a little bit more to do in this movie than in Star Wars. But you know what? Oscar Isaac is also great in Star Wars. So.
Yeah. Well, there, you got to keep the internet happy.
You can't keep the internet happy, Paul. It's impossible. But
I guess that's something I should come to terms with as
you're
people.
Not going to get me bad mouth in Oscar Isaac. The guy can do no wrong in my opinion.
No, I love the film. I can't wait to sit down and digest it again with all of your commentary. But I've listened to parts of it already, and it's super insightful and super fun to listen to. So I want to thank you, for taking the time out to talk through your life. I'm not going to do James Lipton and ask you to tell me your favorite curse word, because that's just not this show. But thank you for taking the time. The career continues to shoot. It's like a hockey stick, and it's great to watch. And for folks that haven't seen your films, every one of them has something really great to love about it, including the most recent one, All Together Now, which is on Netflix, and all the other movies. At the end of your commentary, I'll let everybody know where they can find everything, so they can have their own Brett Haley binge fest during this time at our houses. Yeah. But thank you so much for taking the time, and we're going to now let everybody hear your commentary for Inside Llewyn Davis.
Thanks, Paul. It was a pleasure.
Thanks.
Hello there. This is Brett Haley talking about one of my favorite movies, Inside Llewyn Davis. And this is me talking about Inside Llewyn Davis, and kind of I thought we could take this opportunity to talk about music in movies and its uses in films. But first I'd like to start with just how much I adore this film and why. First of all, opening the film like this is just incredible, and it sort of sets the stage and lets you know immediately that the Coens are in no rush. They're going to let the music do a lot of the storytelling here, and the way that you know that is that the intimacy of this and allowing it to just linger here, and also just using the entire song, which so often filmmakers feel the need to cut away, to cut the song short, to make it a montage of sorts. And all of those are valid things to do. But in this particular film, the Coens are letting you know right up front, this is a music movie. This is about the music. And they're going to let you sit in it and live in it and feel it emotionally and otherwise, like you're in the room. This film is really, I mean, I think Oscar Isaac has been working for a long time up until this point, but really came onto the scene with this because the Coens needed a true blue musician, singer, actor. Very difficult to find someone who can do all three as good as Oscar Isaac can. And this really put him on the map. I mean, he was on the map, but now I think after this, it really made him a star and showed everyone just what a true talent he is. And by opening the film, you know, for a 3.5 minute song, just letting him sing and play the guitar, it means a lot. And the Coens, what they're going for here is no bullshit. You know, they're not doing pre-records. I mean, they're doing pre-records, but they're not, you can tell Oscar's singing here. You know, he could even be playing the guitar as well. I would not be surprised. This feels live and authentic and in it. And that is a big difference. You can feel that as an audience member when you watch a music film. When you know they're just lip syncing. Oh, here comes the track and the playback, and now they're singing along to it. Or are they really doing it live in the moment like this? I chose this film because I think a lot of my movies, previous and upcoming, are music movies, are movies that are, music is a big part of them, whether they're a grounded band type film like this. I did a movie called Hearts Beat Loud, which is about a band, and I was definitely influenced by this film. And I'm directing the prequel for Grease, which is sort of a full-on breakout into song musical, just like the original Grease. And I'm also doing another sort of grounded music film called 36 Questions. So I often find myself going back to this film for its depiction of music and just how brilliantly it's all done. You know, to talk about the Coen Brothers for just a little bit, you know, during quarantine and really this whole year, I was sort of thinking about what do I want to go back and watch, and the Coen Brothers were a big one, something that I wanted to come back to and watch all of their films kind of in order. And I did that, and it was just such a joy. They're probably my, you know, top 5 filmmakers of all time. I'm just such a huge fan of their style and the way that they approach story. You know, I read and heard that this movie is structured like a folk song. You know, it starts at the end, kind of goes off into another direction, then comes back to the end. Very folk style. So it's very interesting to me that that's how they structured it like a song. And apparently the image that kind of inspired them to write this was this one, was of a folk singer being beaten up outside of the gaslight in the Greenwich Village, and sort of how that could happen. How could that person get there? I think a big reason, too, why this film resonates with me and also inspires me a lot is that it's about a guy who's trying. A lot of music movies are about people who make it big, become famous, fame and fortune and being the rock star and sort of that, pretend fantasy stuff that we all want to see, the wish fulfillment aspect of it. That's not this movie. This movie is pure reality. It's pure brutal reality about a guy who is doing everything he can to just get by, just make a buck doing the thing he loves, which is music. And he's a little self-obsessed and a little selfish, and a little full of himself, and also completely insecure and just trying so hard to make it. And I think it's why I love this film, is because it's about a flawed artist who's very good, who would probably deserves some kind of fame and just never gets there. And that's the Coens decide to tell that story rather than the story of, say, Bob Dylan, who made it. And obviously, if you know this film, the end of the film speaks to that. This is about a guy who's trying. I love films about people who are trying, who are trying their best to just do the thing, just get through it and just live life, So let's talk about the use of music here. So we've seen one where we've seen, a live performance, and the Coens just let that be. And this is a brilliant use of this. A guy takes his own record, puts it on to listen to it. And the Coens now are moving the plot forward. And they're going to use this song to basically like a montage and continue the story. But they're not going to cut this song short. The song is going to drive this whole sequence. The Coens have said that the cat is the plot of this movie, which I think is just absolutely brilliant. They apparently were writing this and the cat didn't exist. And they were like watching it or reading it and working on it and saying, we're just missing some plot. Like, it's just kind of one scene to the other. So they added this cat escaping, and then him having to keep up with it and lose it and find it and lose it again and find it, all this stuff. That's the plot of this movie, which is really incredible because it is a character piece. It is really about this man's journey. It's like, I believe it's a week in his life. The cat really, bookends it and drives the whole thing and gives you a reason to lean in and want to keep watching. It's such a wonderful, simple lesson. The smallest amount of plot can help drive a narrative and drive a character piece and make the audience care and lean in and worry and get invested. And there's nothing like an animal to get people invested. I read here that Ethan Coen, I've worked with animals before. I've worked with dogs twice, and working with animals, let me tell you, is very difficult. This is one of my favorite moments in the film. I'll come back to working with animals, but this sequence is one of my favorite moments in the film. The different people looking at this man with a cat, and then this sequence of a cat POV. It's so playful and exciting and fun and unique that we're in the head of this cat for a moment, and that we're feeling what he's feeling, that he's never been on a subway, obviously, and he's totally freaked out. And those cat POV shots, they bring me such joy. So back to working with animals, I think, like I said, I've worked with some dogs before, and it's a challenge. Don't get me wrong. I mean, an animal is difficult no matter what. Dogs want to please humans. That's what they want to do. So it's a little bit easier working with a dog. A cat does not care about pleasing a human. They care about pleasing themselves. And clearly, from reading about this film, the Coens thought that. This is a quote from Ethan Coen. "The cat was a nightmare. The trainer warned us, and she was right. A cat is basically impossible to train. We have a lot of footage of cats doing things we don't want them to do if anyone's interested. I don't know if there's a market for that." Ethan, there is a market for that. It's called the internet, and I'm sure people would love to see all the cat outtakes from your wonderful film. But I can only imagine how difficult it was to get this cat to literally do anything. This putting the milk down reminds me of a scene from Day for Night, which is one of my favorite films, and I was actually thinking about doing that film for this, but Inside Llewyn Davis won out. But Day for Night, if you seek it out, I believe it's on the Criterion Channel. There's a wonderful scene where Francois Truffaut's character, who plays the director of the film within the film, trying to just do that shot, basically. A little plate of milk put down, and a cat walks in and drinks from it, and they keep doing it take after take after take after take, never getting it right. And a PA, or the director's assistant, finds a stray cat, and they're like, "Let's try this cat," and they do it, and the stray cat does it on the first take, while the trained cat can't do it. That's filmmaking. That's movies. And I'm sure that the cat added an incredible amount of chaos to this film, that otherwise, and time and money and energy and stress, but it's worth it. When you see the final film, it is so worth it. It just adds so much to this. So, going back to how that song sort of drove that whole sequence, it just makes it so watchable and so lived in and so real. And you get this sense of where Llewyn came from, that his music was maybe a little bit more upbeat, and it had sort of this energy, and it carried that whole sequence really beautifully. It was all visual, and the song helped do that. And I think you can do that. That's the thing you have to find, is that you don't want your musical numbers or moments to repeat themselves. You want them to be unique and drive the film and the narrative and the character's journey in a very specific way. This is a classic Coen Brothers scene, which has so many different turns. Mel being totally ignoring Llewyn, then Llewyn saying, "Look, man, I'm cold. I need money." And then he says, "I'm going to offer you the coat off my back," a very sweet moment. Then Llewyn getting angry, Mel then getting angry, and then he's going to give him $40 instead of the jacket. I mean, it's just, there's so much going on in that scene. It just shows the brilliance of their writing. Every scene moves like that in a Coen Brothers movie. There's no wasted time or energy. There's also an incredible amount of humor in this film that the more you watch it, the more it becomes incredibly hilarious. I think Fargo, Big Lebowski, these movies, the more you watch them, the more you realize just how funny these guys are, how deep the humor is. Lebowski and Fargo, once you realize what they're really trying to do, they're just trying to make you laugh pretty much. This movie also has that aspect. And I just think the Coens are actually some of the funniest. They've made some of the funniest movies ever, in my opinion, from Raising Arizona. This movie makes me laugh a lot. As heartbreaking as it is so funny. And these kind of side characters are a big part of the Coens brother movie thing, why they work so well. Like the actor here who plays Troy, I mean, what a find. He is just so this guy. And it's just very funny how this all works together. And of course, we continue some plot here. And again, they never lay anything out. If you look at this movie, so now we're in another song. And I think, again, they never cut these songs off. These songs are always played in full. And they do storytelling within it. You can see Llewyn judging Troy, sort of saying, "You're not as good as me." We learn so much about character through this stuff. And then now what they're going to do is something they haven't done yet, which is add a bit of dialogue over this song. So here comes Justin Timberlake's character, Jim. He's going to come in and we're going to learn more. So again, the music is still carrying us through. We're, we're about 15 minutes into the movie. This is the third song. This is letting you know, this is essentially a musical and letting you know that, music is going to drive everything in this film. The research that they did, and it's obviously just incredible, and T-Bone Burnett, and just, it's unbelievable. The music is so incredible, top to bottom. But again, we keep learning here about the characters. We're using the songs to kind of be the background, the canvas, if you will, to the film, to the plot. It keeps driving. But yeah, 3 songs already. And then Jim and Gene get up here in just a minute and do a 4th song. So this movie just is letting you know the music is the thing. I think back to Hearts Beat Loud, a film that I made that has a lot of music in it. And it was such a tough thing to find that balance. How do you write a song that forwards the narrative? How do you use that song visually and otherwise to forward the narrative so it's not just a performance? That takes time and effort and skill. And one of the things we realized in the edit room was that the songs were too long. I think any song over 3 minutes is too long in a movie when it's not a full-on musical. A full-on musical, go crazy. If it brings down the house, do a 5-minute song. But if it's just a straight performance, I think you're pushing it at 3 minutes. The audience is going to get a little, uneasy. They're going to start shifting in their seats a little bit and go, well, what's going on? The Coens get away with it here because they're constantly pushing the narrative and they're constantly pushing moments visually. Also, the music is so good. But again, this grounded approach is very important to me. I just did a film that came out on Netflix recently called All Together Now with the really wonderful and talented Ali Carvalho. And there's a song in the middle of that film called Feels Like Home. And it was really important to me that we get it live, that we get the vocal live on the day. We did the same thing with Nick Offerman and Kiersey Clemens in Hearts Beat Loud. And they did the same thing here. And it makes all the difference in the world. I could go on and on and on about it, but it's possible. You use something called an earwig, which is like a little earpiece. You put it in the actor's ear. They can hear what's going on for the terms of the musical backing, or they're really playing the guitar, piano, whatever it may be. And then you're having them sing, and you're recording it in the room and with, the boom and with the lav and everything, and then you're mixing it in post. It's worth it. It makes all the difference when you can tell someone is not lip syncing. I'll talk about this all the time. So I love this kind of moment here where he gives that, what are you looking at me for? And she just, the disdain for him and the complications there. Again, it's so funny. And then again, they're adding more dialogue on top of this. It's very smart. They're just planting the seeds everywhere. And again, it's all being done over music. The music is the thing. And I just love, the Coens are so good at casting. Everyone, Matt Casella, what an amazing character actor. Carey Mulligan, Justin Timberlake doing a turn here that is just really fantastic. You've got John Goodman and Garrett Hudlin and Alex Karpovsky. You've got Adam Driver, doing, kind of a, before he really, really blew up, doing a really, really funny, great role. And it's, just they're casting this guy, this actor, Stark Sands, what a find. It just is incredible. It's so funny, this slurping of the cereal and sitting right in front of Llewyn in a rocking chair. It's very funny. Another thing that I like about the Coens, and something that I think about often when I'm making films, is just their coverage. If you look at this scene and a lot of their scenes, they're two setups, really. Two setups and two sizes on the lens. And they like to do wide lenses close. So they've got these two setups, and they're just doing, shot and shot, reactions back and forth. This isn't complicated. You aren't cutting to a wide. You aren't cutting back into profile shots or different shots. They're comfortable with just the two shots, right? They do pop in. Eventually, they change the lens and get a little bit closer when the scene calls for it. But these are basically the same setups. And it is all about the writing and the acting. Obviously a beautifully lit scene, a beautifully designed scene. Everything in these frames is thought out and beautiful and just put together, but they're not overcomplicating it. They're allowing the writing and the acting to do the work. And again, you're showing that everybody's having it a little bit easier than Llewyn, or at least handling it better than Llewyn. So we just need to let the acting do the job here. I read Cassavetes on Cassavetes. When I was a young filmmaker, I wanted to make really big movies, and I still do. I want to make big, studio movies and action films and musicals and, romantic comedies. I love genre, sci-fi. But when I was young and I read Cassavetes on Cassavetes, and I sort of really got in, and I highly recommend that book if you can find it, by Jay Carney. It's a wonderful book and really inspiring. And for me, that really changed everything in terms of how I approached writing and directing, or how I approached my career, I guess. What I realized was, this is very nerve-wracking, that head hitting is very, very effective. This whole thing is extremely effective. Back to the plot of The Cat. Again, imagine no cat here. We're not as leaning in. But yeah, I read this book, Cassavetes on Cassavetes, and it's basically like, look, everything's important in a movie, but if you can do great writing, great acting in a close-up, you've got a movie. And I think for me, it was inspiring because I was like, you know what? I'm going to stop worrying about the bells and whistles, and I'm just going to focus on those two things for a while. And I made smaller films that started my career, and I'm okay with that. It got my foot in the door. It got me eventually into Sundance, etc. And for me, that was the path. The path was to kind of pare it all back and say, what can I do well? How can I accomplish something for very cheap well? And for me, it was like, well, how can I write a simple script with great, and then focus on the script and the performances, simple coverage, and just execute that and execute it as well as I could, rather than trying. Now, granted, there are filmmakers who can do big genre, who can do, your kind of contained thriller or something. But for me, it was about the acting and about the writing. And I think that oftentimes a Coen Brothers movie is that. It's really focused on this stuff. And I think it's why I keep coming back to it. But yet they are also incredibly cinematic and incredibly, but their coverage is never over the top. They're known as like, oh, they're so stylized. But over the years, from Blood Simple to Raising Arizona, and you look at now, they've calmed down. They started to realize, I think, the acting and the writing is the thing. Well, you got John Goodman, pointing a gun at a guy in a bowling alley saying over the line and, screaming about Vietnam. You don't need to do much with the camera. You've got this, let the actor within that frame do his or her job. And, Carey Mulligan just killing it here. And it's just a medium shot. Again, close, a medium close up, wide and close. I think it's worth noting that the Coen Brothers didn't work with Roger Deakins on this. He was shooting, I think it was Skyfall, and couldn't get out, and they wanted to make this film, so they worked with I am blanking on his name, but I'm going to look it up right now. He's a wonderful French cinematographer. Bruno Delbonnel, who did, I believe he did Amelie and Very Long Engagement. Yep, and he has kind of become the Coen Brothers guy now. you can see his touch on this. You can see that this movie, while the coverage is very similar, the look is different. It's cooler, grayer, the paler. There's just this sort of look and a feel of this film. Definitely feels like New York in the winter, I can tell you that. As a New Yorker, this is what New York feels like. I love the color palette. I love the feeling of this movie. It doesn't feel, though, like other Coen Brothers movies to me in terms of its look. So I think he really brought something to the table, and the design is really specific as well. But I think, he's kind of become their guy. He shot the Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and he's doing Macbeth, which is a solo Joel Coen movie, which I believe is shooting now, or it's just finished shooting. I think they ended up getting through it in COVID, which is great for all movies. I hope we keep making movies through all this stuff. Again, I think the thing I take from this stuff, again, is their mom and dad's house. That's, now we know who this is. You could put it together, but now you know. It's Llewyn's sister. He's coming over. And she thinks, he's coming over just to be nice. And again, he's asking for money. And again, these wonderful, wonderful character actors, and they just get incredible performances out of everybody in this film. And you're establishing sort of the dream here. In this last movie I did All Together Now, I did a lot of it was about dream versus reality. I think we all struggle with that. We all say, well, this is what I would really like to do, but I have to do this. I have to put food on the table, pay rent. I have to get by. So how am I going to get by? I got to get by to do some job I don't want to do or something I don't want to do. But what I really want to do is blank. And that's what I love about this film. It's the dream versus the reality. And All Together Now, it's the dream of this girl going to Carnegie Mellon, going to a college that she dreams of, chasing a musical theater career. And but she does not have the means to do so. She's struggling in her normal life. And I think seeing Llewyn struggle, because he loves music so much, that music, even though it's this beautiful thing in his life, is an albatross. It drags him down. It makes him miserable. The thing that we love the most can sometimes make us the most miserable. And I think that that's really an incredible theme in this film and an incredible idea. Like, if this thing that we love is not loving us back, what do we do with that? How do we deal with it? And you're seeing here Llewyn try to kind of avoid who he is, who he was, where he came from. He's not embracing that. He's trying to run from it. And, his dream is like, I've got to be this cool guy. He's not allowing himself to just be him. Let the music kind of come through him. And he's trying to be this other thing that he thinks people want. I oftentimes watch this scene and wonder how in the hell they timed it out. They were just standing there and someone was spotting it, was like, go, go, go. And maybe they got lucky with the train coming the other way. But as this scene intensifies, there's an opportunity. He covers his ear. What's going on? And these trains come through. It's absolutely brilliant. And I don't know how, I guess they just did it over and over again until they got that right. Skip Liebse, who is the longtime Coen Brothers sound designer and mixer, post-mixer, he's my favorite. I love the sounds that the Coens are so big on using sound as a storytelling device. And I really feel is a big reason behind that. I think he's working with Cuarón now, and he did Roma and Gravity. He's absolutely brilliant. I had the pleasure of meeting him when I was an assistant. I was working for John Hillcoat on a movie called The Road, and he was somebody that interviewed for that job. And I actually knew who he was and was just like, man, you're amazing and a hero. And he was very kind and gracious when I met him. And he's actually mentored my post-sound designer and mixer, Zach Sievers, who's done the majority of my films. Sound is something we don't think about often. And it's, again, I think if you can do this stuff real, like, again, it's the Coens saying, no, we've got to cast real musicians here so that you can get this type of scene. Because they're really playing the guitar. They're really working this out. That makes a difference. You could see Oscar playing. I mean, that kind of thing where Adam Driver is doing this, I think, is one of the funniest bits in this. It's so weird. And Llewyn is super weirded out. It just makes me laugh so much. And again, this, that he wrote this song, and Llewyn obviously thinks it's absolute trash. It's super fun. It is fun to see the other side of the music world at this time. And this is a really big thing. But again, now they're going to allow this song to be. But it doesn't feel like anything else in the film. It's definitely funny and silly and ridiculous, but it's also like an impressive performance from all three of these guys. And it's so fun to see. Again, this is like a different, you haven't seen this type of song in the film up to this point. It has a different energy and a feeling, and it's super entertaining. Adam Driver, MVP in this scene. It's just ridiculous. I read that they did a lot of music rehearsal with all of the actors for this film, and that sort of served as like a rehearsal. It's how they got the actors together and working together and knowing each other. And through that, they also started, rehearsing and talking about the film, and the music was really the in for that. And I think it's a really smart way to go. On Hearts Beat Loud, it was such a small film. We had maybe 3 or 4 days of music rehearsal to get Kiersey and Nick up to date. They had been practicing with Keegan DeWitt, who writes all the music for my films. They've been practicing for months up to that point. But then we had to get them together and figure out how are we going to film these different, performances and make sure that the music feels right. And Nick, being the talented guy that he is, he learned guitar, he learned bass, drums. I mean, he had some level of knowledge with all of these instruments, but he really stepped up, and you can see it in the film when you watch it, that he is really doing all of that, and it makes all the difference in the world. Again, if you can ground it in reality, make it real, make it believable, you're invested. The second the magic is broken and you're like, well, this isn't real, I don't buy this, then you don't care. You stop caring, and you're like, this is cheap, and I don't give a shit. But when you're really seeing the thing, it's working. And okay, this guy's really got talent, and you're rooting for him, But otherwise, you're not rooting for him. If he was just, if they never showed him playing the guitar and you could tell it was all, playback, lip syncing, you just wouldn't care. It's important. Poor Llewyn, homeless. I mean, it's just incredible. This is one of my favorite characters in the movie. is Mel's secretary. And this stuff is it's just always so funny and engaging. And again, as a screenwriter, I always look at the Coens like, how can you just kind of deepen the world around the main characters? How can you make it feel lived in and alive and colorful? Rather than just focusing on your main characters, how can you make the world around them feel real and funny and alive? They do a ton of that with the supporting characters all the time, but especially in this film. Because Llewyn is in every single scene. It's his movie. He is literally driving the film. Oscar Isaac's in almost every frame of this movie. And he's driving it. I love the detail of those kind of character cartoons of Mel on the wall there. And this is so depressing to just have all these unsold records in the back. And then, yeah, you want to, I mean, it's again, the dream of like, well, you don't want to just throw them out. They meant something. I love all these really small hallways in this film. Carey Mulligan's, Gene's apartment has the same kind of similar thing. And it almost feels like almost could be the same apartment. They're all, these small dumps, as Adam Driver puts it. I think about this movie and what it means to, I've done a few movies like this where a main character is kind of, in every scene of the film, and how, that's the rule. You're just going to go with this. This is so funny. His box of albums. It just, again, goes back to this idea that everybody has this dream and it's so hard to achieve. But going back to the idea of how to kind of build a movie based around one character, you've got to have an actor that can carry it. I've done a lot of movies this way, actually. Also might be why I love this film, is that I do like movies like this that are kind of, the POV is important, right? You're talking about POV. POV of this movie is Llewyn, and it's called Inside Llewyn Davis. You're literally with him. You're feeling him. You're feeling his emotions, his what's going on with him throughout the entire film. And I've done this with my first film, The New Year. I'll See You in My Dreams, The Hero, and my newest film, All Together Now, which are all one person is driving everything, and they're in every single scene. That's certainly one way to do it. Hearts Beat Loud is another way to approach it. You can do two POVs, a two-hander where you're cutting back and forth. Then, of course, you can do the ensemble piece, and I did that again with All the Bright Places. But, of course, you can also do the film where you're just cutting from person to person to person to person to person. I find those, I just don't think that as a writer I like a two-hander or three-hander or POV. I like simple approach because you can get more from the characters. This to me feels like that. And now that I'm thinking about, a lot of Coen Brothers movies do that. Barton Fink, Raising Arizona. Rarely do you cut away from the main character or characters. They're always kind of in the scenes. The Big Lebowski, Fargo cuts around a little bit. That really works for that. But POV is really important, and you should make that decision and that rule before you sit down to start writing. It's like, is this going to be only this person, or are you going to cut to like Jim and Gene separate from Llewyn? Is it going to be that kind of movie? You've got to establish that pretty quickly if it's going to be that kind of thing. I often think of the cat. Like, imagine this scene works. There's no cat. Now look at how much more dynamic it is by adding the plot element of the cat. Now we've got some movement and some energy and beyond just the thing that just happened. Oh, it's great to see New York back in 1961. They did such a good job with this. Just incredible. It must be, I can only imagine how fun it is to like shut down a street on Greenwich Village and getting to do it as 1961. It's just incredible. Yeah, never got the cat's name, which is such a good detail. I love how relieved Llewyn is here. And again, there you go. You pick up right where the scene left off. And it's like, you can see the scene without the cat. Look how much it added. And it's so simple. It's just something that I try to keep in mind. How can you add that? There's a great sound moment that helps that cut a ton, doing that loud car going by and, Again, the lived-in elements of these characters, his girlfriend and all that. It's just the world outside. And again, like, you don't need that scene, right? Who's Arthur Milgram? And I'm going to like, but again, that character so desperately wants to be famous that he's willing to change his name. So many people do. It's whatever it needs to be to make it. And people are telling you, you need to make it. This is the dream, the things we sacrifice for the dream. It's often reminded, and it's got to be outside of just Llewyn. It's through everybody else. The brilliance. And I can't, this scene is absolutely devastating. And it's what a devastating kind of reveal that Llewyn has a child that he has no idea about. You know, this sort of reveal of like this layer of this character. And again, these amazing supporting actors, you just can't beat the moments in this. And I find this very heartbreaking, and Llewyn had no idea. And now you're setting up this idea of Akron and this really beautiful moment later. And I know the Coens have talked about what they wanted to do with that moment later. And it's really smart and it's really heartbreaking. But again, it's what the audience doesn't know, and really interesting, unique cinematic ways to discover this kind of stuff and not just have it come right out. Apparently, I'm just reading here that Oscar Isaac really doesn't like cats. So he did a very good job. I love that it's the same guy from earlier, so they're staring at him. It's fantastic. It's kind of like this repeat beats coming back and back and back. I love these. The gore finds are one of my favorite things in this film because you just buy them as this kind of intellectual, wealthy, Upper West Side couple that like sort of having Llewyn as almost like a pet. You know, like, oh, look at our musician friend. We're very cultured. You know, we have a musician friend. Look, and now let's have him play a song. He's like a little, a little dancing monkey for them or whatever. You know, like now perform for us. You know, here's our intellectual friends are over. I want you to perform. And I just buy all of this. But he also uses them to some degree. He's like, see a little bit of comfort, and he's sort of okay. Yeah, he'll take it. He'll be this guy for them. You know, it's such a great character detail. I think it would be sort of interesting to talk about my first film, which I'm sure no one has seen. It's called The New Year. And I was talking a little bit earlier about the Cassavetes on Cassavetes and how I sort of came to the idea of throwing out kind of the bells and whistles and focusing on something. And people often ask me, how do you get a career going in the film business or as a director? It was very important to me early on to make something. I think the Coens are a good fit for this because they went out and they made Blood Simple. They didn't ask for permission. They made that shit. They went out and did it. I felt the same way coming off of working in the industry for a while and just going like, you know what? I don't really care. I just want to make a movie. I want to make a feature film, and I just want to try my hand at it. So I wrote a script with my sister-in-law. I had a very simple idea, and I wrote it for something that I knew I could do. I shot it in my hometown in Pensacola, Florida, and I knew that I could do it really well. Or I shouldn't say I should say cheap, or basically free. I could get the locations for free. I could shoot at my childhood home. I could shoot at places where I could walk in as a hometown boy and say, hey, I'm just going to shoot this little movie here. And I shot it with 2 cameras, kind of mostly in opposite directions so that we could do it very quickly. And we did it in about 12 days. And it cost me about somewhere, I haven't really done the math, somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000 on a credit card when all is said and done. Because I begged for free food, and I, got housing from friends, and just a lot of people pitched in to help. And I just went out and made it. And I think that that's a really important thing to do, is that you just go out and make it. To just jump in really quickly here to Llewyn Davis, he goes back to sing the song that we know was him and Mike, and he's singing it. This scene is absolutely devastating because he can't, that is just unbelievable. It's so devastating and such a the tension in this scene and the emotion between it's really phenomenal. It just, the Coens have this way of building. He's hurting and harming, and he's like, this is my job. Yeah, exactly. This is one of my favorite scenes. It's just so beautifully written, and the punctuation on this scene, it doesn't get any better. We've all been here where a scene just where a moment just sort of just boils over and goes crazy. But the punctuation on this scene is unbelievable. Classic Coen Brothers. Where's its scrotum? Cut to black. And go into sort of a very, very unique and dreamlike, bizarre section of the film, which I love so much. He's still got that cat, because what is he going to do? Put it out on the street? It's not their cat. This sequence in the film almost reminds me of like a very strange fever dream or something. And it's like, maybe it's like a John Cheever story, or Raymond Carver. It just has this very odd sense. It's almost like they stuck this little short film in the middle of the movie. We introduce these 2 characters, and this movie becomes something else altogether. And yet it informs, I think, the character's journey and where he is and how desperate he is. And it's just such a bizarre, strange. They're so good at bizarre and strange, but, it being real and feeling really. There's no rush here. There's no score. That's something I'm now remembering, is that I believe this is the first time the Coens have ever done a movie without score. Carter Burwell usually does their scores, and I believe there's no score in this film. The only music in the film is the music in the film, which is a very smart decision, I think. It's bold, but they're not using stuff to drive every scene, the emotion. They're letting the scenes play out. They're patient. They're not in a rush. They're going to do what they're going to do. That's so funny. What's your name? Pablo. John Goodman is just unbelievable. He's unbelievable in every film. He's just one of my favorite actors. And Garrett Hedlund doing amazing work with no words at all. It's just such a strange situation to be put in. But, I think going back to my my first film and how I sort of entered this industry, I think it's like you got to go and you got to go do the thing. If you want to write, if you want to direct. If you want to act, figure out a way to act. There are so many different ways that you can do this, So I just tell people, you go and do. It's got to be about the work and about the thing. And I think the Coen Brothers represent that. They're just filmmakers that said, we're going to go make the thing the way we want to make it and keep doing that. I think if you can find your way through it, it's really fantastic. And I think it's the best way in. Make it your own. Define the kind of career you want. And I've been very lucky in the sense that I've been able to make films after that. And then you build up. You start with a $5,000 movie, and then in 10, 15 years time, you're making, bigger movies. And but it's about the work. You just have to keep working, keep your head down, do the best you can, and do it. Do the thing. Do the work. It's all about the work, I always say. So I love that. He is always sticking him. The cold and the wind, I would not be surprised if they had sort of wind fans off, because it just adds so much to this, or they got lucky, but it just has this feeling to it that is just unbelievable. The cinematic, again, going back to Skip Lievse's sound design, that restroom sign, that creaking in the wind, fantastic. It's like this little weird road trip movie in the center of this film, and what is going on with these guys, and who are they, and you never really quite know them. I love a crossfade. I'm going to go ahead and say it. I love a crossfade if it's done crossfade if it's done well. I think the Coens do crossfades very well, and they edit their own films, so it's really they know what they want. So here we're back, and this is driving the score, if you will. And he's almost doing it to just annoy them. He's kind of an asshole sometimes, and he's trying to get a rise out of these guys, which is pretty. I will say, if the car here is green screen, it's really good. And I can't tell. Usually I'm the first to tell. I hate green screen in the car. I think we've come a long way. It's getting quite good. But if this is green screen, I would be. It's really, really well done. The lighting, the design is great, and I would love to know if I really can't tell. Maybe they did it practically. I always try to do car scenes practically because I just think green screen often looks wonky. But this all looks really, really good. Again, I think anything you can do to ground the film and not distract is important. And now we learn more about Mike, and I think I love the way this is shot, and that looking at the back of his head, and now we learn that he killed himself. It's interesting. I was reading that this film was actually one of the few Coen Brothers films that actually apparently had, well, whatever this means, a hard time finding distribution. Eventually, CBS Films picked it up for distribution. I doubt they had that hard of a time. But it sort of reminds me of what, what distribution meant and what it means now in the kind of changing industry, and how my career has changed over the years in terms of distribution and my career really started with I'll See You in My Dreams and going to Sundance and having the film picked up there for, at the time, a new distributor, Bleecker Street, and then the film doing pretty well. And really just being in, maybe 100 or 200 theaters across the country. And that was kind of it. And then doing its run. I believe the film is on Netflix now, and it was on Stars for a little while. Like, sort of has a streaming life after that. And I sort of repeated that with The Hero and with Hearts Beat Loud. I was very lucky to get those films into Sundance, which is a great place to land a distribution deal, even now. South by Southwest and Tribeca are also great places to do that. There's obviously Cannes and Venice, and each of them have their own kind of positives and negatives in terms of what kind of distribution you can find. And basically, distribution is everything. You want people to see your films, right? And I've done my last 2 films for Netflix, and I find that millions of people can watch your movie in a weekend. It's insane how many people have access to your film, and that feels good. But it also is not the same as having theatrical. There's different pros and cons to them, and I think that both serve a really important part of film. And now with the pandemic, with COVID, with everything that's going on, I think streaming is more and more viable, and films like this, if they end up on Netflix, that's great. I don't think I think different movies are going to want to be on big screens, and different movies are going to be more apt to be streaming, and it's okay. And we can also have big movies be streaming. We've seen success with that over and over again at Netflix, and I think the conversation will continue. But any distribution is good, and just getting your movie out to people, for me as a filmmaker, is the most important thing. If I made movies like Christopher Nolan, it would be very, very important to me that they get the big screen distribution that they deserve. I cannot get over the design of this film. It is absolutely incredible. The color, I'm looking up who the production designer is now so I can talk about that, because production design is just, it's the look of the movie. It is everything. It seems to be their usual person, Jess Gonker, who started with them, it looks like, on No Country for Old Men. They did Burn After Reading. He did Burn After Reading, A Serious Man, True Grit, Inside Llewyn Davis, Hail Caesar, Ballad of Buster Scruggs. So really incredible. Also, started with Capote, did Moneyball, did Foxcatcher, did Little Women, did Greta Gerwig's Little Women. Obviously seems to be Bennett Miller's guy. Love Bennett Miller. Moneyball is just one of my favorite movies. That's another movie I could do one of these for in the future. But the production design in this is just perfection. This scene always reminds me of The Shining, and I think I read it is inspired by The Shining, that wonderful scene in in The Shining when he's in the bathroom. It's again, like, choosing that color green really gives this a feeling. If it were red or yellow or white, this scene would feel completely different. And I think the more I make movies, the more I start realizing that these decisions are everything. These smaller decisions where you're like, well, what color, how do you want the bathroom to look? They're so crucial. And for some reason, this kind of sickly green blue is perfect for this scene. It just works. I love Garrett Hedlund's reaction here. It's like it's nothing, which is it's obviously something. But I think these little decisions, they add up, you know, and they're, I mean, even like the soap dispensers having that same color green in them, and making it rain outside. Every little decision that you make adds to the cinematic quality of this. You know, the rain here and the wind, that kind of like wind coming off the back of it and the reflection of him, like it just gives it this feeling. This, it's what cinema really, it has the power to do. It gives you this dreamlike, odd, distinct sensation. Also great sound. I mean, just that's the fade out and the tap, tap, tap coming back in. What a totally bizarre sequence of events, and just trying to get to Chicago. And although you never see this guy's face, the cop, he's just this imposing figure. Again, how they choose to shoot this and how they choose to cut it. Let's talk again about POV. You know, look, if memory serves, we don't really. Look at that. The power there of being just Llewyn's POV, not going. You know, again, POV shot out. We're never outside of this car. With Garrett Hedlund's character, we're just looking at it from inside the car out. All of this is this POV that is incredibly strong. It's very, very specific. And the decision was made, you could tell, to stick to those rules rather than just get the coverage. Hey, we're going to cover it here, cover it there, get the wide, do this. They're saying, no, this scene's going to play out very, very specifically. And you see that less and less in movies. I think the tendency with television is just the cover. And the Coen Brothers are still of that. You can tell they're like, these are the 5-6 shots that are going to cover the scene. And we know how we're going to edit it. You know, I read that this is sort of inspired, much like "O Brother, Where Art Thou" was inspired by the Odyssey, and you know, I believe the cat's name is Ulysses, I believe, and so that's a really cool thing, and you can see that. You can see the different figures that they meet along the way. This is unbelievable. This scene of looking at the cat, and slight zoom here, really good performance from the cat. And just this eerie, disturbing sadness in that he leaves that cat. It's really heartbreaking. I wonder what kind of fog machine they had out here to do this. Just incredible. And that's a decision you got to make. You got to plan for that stuff. You can't just, it's not going to be there on the day. You got to be like, hey, we need this massive fog machine. Let's make it work. The feeling of that wind rippling and just how miserable this is. It's you can just feel it. You can feel it. You know, the sound, the cinematography, the look, everything adds up to this feeling. I love that sort of distant city in the background of Chicago. And obviously it's like either visual effect or some kind of practical effect. You know, he's on this bus here, and there's just a feeling to all of this. Again, no score. It's not focusing on anything. What a great detail, having the soaking wet shoes coming down. I mean, the socks. You are Llewyn right now. You can feel what he's feeling from what the Coens are deciding to show you. You've been there. You've had, you know, we've all been there. And we just keep feeling that. it's pretty impressive, and it's just great filmmaking. It's just stuff that inspires me every day, and I try really hard to keep these kind of details in mind. They're so detail oriented, what they decide to focus on. I also want to talk briefly about, I'm such a nerd about aspect ratios. I can go on and on about aspect ratios. I think it's very interesting that the Coen brothers, the majority of their films are in this aspect ratio, which is actually 1:8:5. So if you're watching on your TV at home, you'll notice a little bit of black at the top and the bottom of the screen. That's classic 1:8:5. It's not quite 16:9, which is a little bit taller. 1:8:5 has that little bit of black at the top and the bottom. That is most of their movies are 1:8:5. They're, with a few exceptions. I believe True Grit, No Country for Old Men are 2.35 or 2.40. They're shot on anamorphic lenses. These are spherical lenses that they're using, and I don't know why they prefer the 1:8:5. Aspect ratio, but that's clearly something that they do, and they seem to be very specific about when they do a 2.40, an anamorphic movie, and for some reason, it makes sense with True Grit. It certainly makes sense with No Country, but the other films that they've done, I'd have to go back to Buster Scruggs to. I'm not positive about that one, but this is clearly their chosen aspect ratio. I've played around a lot with aspect ratios. I've shot. I feel like I've shot them all at this point. And what's fun is that there's kind of new aspect ratio, not new, but more people are using 2.00 and 2.20, mainly because of televisions. More people are watching on devices, on iPads, on phones, on TVs. Fincher was the first one that I know of to use 2.20, and I believe he did that with his Netflix series House of Cards. It feels sort of widescreen. It feels sort of anamorphic, but it's not quite. And I believe he shoots the same on Mindhunter. I did that on my last film altogether now because I was for Netflix, and I thought, well, that's a nice look for a TV. I just sometimes I love the look of anamorphic. I love 2.35. All the Bright Places was shot with anamorphic lenses, and I love the look of it. But I wanted to try a different one, and I like the look of 2.20 on a TV. I'm thinking of it on a TV, on a tablet. What does it look like? And that's obviously where the movie's living when it's on Netflix. So I chose that one. Hearts Beat Loud was 2.00, which is a different kind of between. It's sort of a 1.8:5. It's a little wider than a 1.8:5, and it's very interesting. I did Hearts Beat Loud in that aspect ratio. I've shot 16:9. I've shot 1.8:5. I've shot it all, so I just keep trying it. And I think you have to just think about what's going to best serve your story. I try to do that every time I sit down with a script. I'm like, what does this feel like? What is this going to be? What is going to help tell this story? What lenses, what look. Anamorphic, I think, is very specific look, and you should know what you're doing if you're going to do that. And have a reason, not just I like the way this looks, have a reason for it. I always think about Ford versus Ferrari, a movie like that. That movie, yeah, you want to shoot that anamorphic lenses. But this feels right. I could definitely see this movie as anamorphic, but for some reason it just feels right as 1.8:5, and I can't really tell you why. But it does, and the coverage and the way that they approach this stuff, it's really fantastic. I love this one source of light coming in. You break up the right and the left of frame, but you just have this big blast of light coming through, like it's this, the sun from a cold day just kind of ripping through the doors, and that's it. You break up the background with a little bit of light behind Llewyn there, and you go with it. This scene was a massive inspiration for Hearts Beat Loud. If you know that film, or if you want to seek out that film, there's a scene where Nick Offerman plays a song for Kiersey Clemons. And, I was like, well, what's a good example of someone playing guitar while another person sits there and listens? Now, the emotions of this scene and my scene are completely different, but nothing really gets better than a push in on a person, Oscar Isaac, in this, really doing this. There's no doubt that he is playing that guitar and singing that song. And I told Nick, I was like, look, man, that's what we have to do. We have to have you learn the song, play it, sing it. And the fact that you're playing it in front of your daughter, you can be nervous. You can be a little uneasy you don't have to be so perfect. His character is not as talented of a musician as Llewyn is. But you see this is just perfection. And it's all about the cut point, right? I always think about, where do you cut? How do you get out of this shot? And we played around with that a ton in the edit of Hearts Beat Loud. You know, you've got Nick's coverage and Kiersey's coverage. Here you've got Oscar's coverage and you've got, F. Murray Abraham's coverage. And that's where they chose to do it. It's kind of midpoint. And we're wondering, what is F. Murray Abraham thinking here? Is he enjoying this? Is he liking this? Of course, he's poker facing it big time. And now they're a little more free to kind of go back and forth. But they hold for a long time on that. What we did was just one on Nick, and then we held on Kiersey till the end, I believe. It's been a while since I've watched it, but that's my feeling. But this was a huge inspiration, just because you can feel this song. You know, there's nothing about this that's bullshit. And Oscar Isaac, what a talent. Going a cappella here and just... It's also good that there's something in the foreground. You know, that table really helps that shot. So you're traveling over it. That helps a ton. I don't think we had that in Hearts Beat Loud. Something to travel over. You should, if you can do foreground work and move past things, that really helps a push in. And this is one of the most memorable parts of the movie, in my opinion. I don't see a lot of money here. It's just, there you go. Dreams versus reality. You know, how's this actually going to work? How are we going to monetize your dream? You know, it's interesting. He offers him this opportunity, some kind of opportunity. And of course, Llewyn rejects it. It's not good enough for him. You know, he has a very specific vision in mind for what he is. I think it's a good time to talk about how just incredible the performances are in this film. I mean, I've talked a lot about it. I could go on and on and on. And I don't know how the Coen brothers specifically work with their actors. I don't know. I do know that they get wonderful performances consistently over and over again. I can talk about the way that I work with actors, and working with actors to me is the greatest joy of the job. I love all aspects of filmmaking, but the acting and the art of it, the you know, just how you can approach it. There's so many different ways to do it. I love it. It's one of my favorite parts. This is one of the only non-original songs in the film, like kind of diegetic songs just playing, which is interesting. The other car, there's no music at all. And again, passing Akron is such a heartbreaking thing here. And the Coen Brothers would never have... I mean, you might think for a second, oh, is he going to go in there? Is he going to, take the exit? Coen Brothers, if you know them, they would never do that. It's just not their style. But just the idea that he could have and he didn't is everything. That there's this other world. Llewyn, has a kid and this, all this stuff is waiting for him over there, and he just keeps driving. And, of course, boy, they use cut to blacks, fades. Just their transitions are fantastic, Rather than just going straight to that, they choose to cut to black and go here. this is such an amazing scene, and again, the feeling of it, the instant karma that comes back. And again, you know, as a filmmaker, you're like, I can choose any song I want here. I can choose anything for this moment. What is it going to be? And what's something that we haven't heard at all in this folk, you know, it's this opera song, and then the cat, and those, I love that guy doesn't wake up. It's just unbelievable. So tired. But the music drives this, you know, the music makes this a cinematic moment. But it's all grounded in reality. Everything in this is grounded. It's very sad to watch that. It's very representative of Llewyn and what he's going on. I love that the snow in that POV shot catches the red light of the brake lights. It's very cool, that detail. So I'm sorry, I got carried away with and caught up in this scene. It's just so fantastically done. But, you know, I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can approach actors, if that's something, you know, like, to me, again, the most fascinating part of this job. What I've discovered is that no two actors are alike. You know, you can have certain sort of rules and ways that you approach acting as a craft, especially film acting as a craft. But in my experience, no two actors are ever the same, and you want to approach them in different ways. You know, some actors might need more direction or like more direction. Some might like less direction and less hand-holding. It all depends. And I try to read actors through rehearsal, through just getting to know them, you know, personally, hopefully as some kind of a friend or acquaintance, and you work with that. You work with this idea of how best to approach each individual rather than approaching everyone with broad strokes, saying, this is the way I do it, this is the way I want it. It's like, what works best for them? For me, it's creating an environment for actors on set that is conducive to great work, you know? And to me, that means listening to them, getting a sense of them, and not just being like, yeah, we're all going to do it this way, we're all going to do it my way. It's like, oh, this person needs a little bit of this, and that person needs a little bit of that, and I'll push him or her harder, but ease off on them and take my time and let them have a few takes. Like, everybody should be approached a little bit differently, in my opinion. And again, everybody directs differently. Everybody acts differently. There's so many ways to approach this stuff. And I really think that for me, it's about just creating an environment where the actors feel safe. They feel safe to work, to do the thing, to fail, to succeed, to give me options. I love options. I'm an options guy. You know, I feel like an actor comes in and can kind of take your words and make them into the thing that they become. You know? And so it just, to me, it's important to not be too stuck on something. If you have something in your mind, the way it's supposed to be read or heard, that's fine. That's totally fair and it's totally natural. But I also find it's best to sort of let that go once you're on set. You just go, okay, now I'm gonna let the actor interpret this and maybe surprise me, maybe show me something about my work, my words, the writing that we did that I never even really knew. That to me is really exciting. And part of the fun of directing, part of the fun of getting on set and discovering these things with your actors and letting them interpret your words, finding a middle ground if necessary, or being like, oh man, or they do it exactly the way you thought. Like, all of those outcomes really excite me. It's my favorite part. I just think that obviously the Coen brothers put a lot of time and effort into their actors. You can tell. It comes through in all of their films. They clearly create an environment that's good for them because you can feel it in the work. And I feel like a lot of times actors are left out kind of to dry in modern filmmaking. And I would really highly not recommend that. You should, give them a lot of love and a lot of care, and you'll get these wonderful performances that'll come through on screen. When they're at ease and they're not feeling that pressure and you're helping them, that's going to create great performances. It's very interesting that they kind of do a similar scene to what they just did. He's playing a song for his dad, but this has obviously less movement, just two very similar shots and just coming back and forth between them. Again, the simplicity here is impressive. They're not in a rush. That look out the window says a lot. Really says everything. That says more than any dialogue or any sort of thing. I think the thing that they're doing here that feels very different is all character. Again, using the songs, in the previous scene with F. Murray Abraham, he's giving his all to say, this is my shot. This is my one last shot to kind of make it. And here he is sort of playing for his father. He's given up. He's going to go back to being a seaman. And he's like, that's it. I'm just going to play this song. It's almost connecting with playing the music to play the music because he loves it. But you can tell, this is saying so much about his relationship with his father without saying anything at all. And that is the power of this, and that is how the Coens use the music. It's like a musical in many ways. You look at this, it's like a grounded musical. The music is telling the story. So it isn't wasted screen time. In fact, it's rich. It is absolutely rich and deep and feeling and emotional. And again, Oster's doing all of that. I can't say it enough how amazing that is. Then you go a little tighter. That is like, it's just so hard. He plays this song and his dad, this is the reality sneaking back in. What is the point? And then he wants this thing that he doesn't, So this is his own worst enemy. He thought, I don't need that. I'm never going to need those things. But we know, he's lost now. What is he going to do? Oh, it's so good. So now we're back in the rhythm of this thing. It'd be very easy to just make Llewyn a very nice person and all these bad things happen to him, but he's complicated, he's complex, he's difficult, he's real and fleshed out. And I think the Coens ask that of their audience. They don't make it easy to just quote unquote like Llewyn. He's a difficult guy. I did a similar film altogether now where, bad things happen to a character. She's much more likable than Llewyn is. It's for a slightly different audience, and I think that what we're trying to do there is play into other, she's a little stubborn, she's playing different things, but the way that they write Llewyn, that he's so flawed, is really brave, and it's really human, and I think it's why this film is so rich. If you can do that with your characters, not just make them likable, but rather fleshed out and real and human, because if you think about characters that really stick with you, they're not perfect unless you're watching a superhero movie or a kids movie. Like there are movies and places to do that with, but in this type of movie, you want the character to be complicated and complex and layered, and it can mean a lot. And I like that he's given up and he's getting asked to come back one more time, one more time to sing this thing. That's a great line. I'm tired. That's it. Sometimes chasing the dream just makes you tired. And you just, at what point, what is a human's breaking point where they just give up? And this tenderness here, this kind of unexpected tenderness is really, really special. And it's earned at that point. Again, going back to every character in this film being fleshed out. Also, look at the great background that they got on this. So specific. You can see the Coen Brothers sitting around headshots going, yes, this guy. Oh, yeah, this guy with the beard. That kind of stuff, every little detail matters. Again, I can't get enough of the production design in this. You look at this stuff. So funny. And getting out of that very quickly. Again, here, going to the different types of folk music that was happening at that time, really embracing all of this, and obviously having a guy like T-Bone Burnett to inform that. It's pretty impressive. So as we come into the last, we've kind of caught up, folk song wise, structure wise, we've kind of caught up almost to the ending here, where we're coming to the, kind of the end of that verse, I guess, before we come back to the end. Matt Casella's character is going to sort of push Llewyn over the edge here, and it's just, at what point do you just break? And he's obviously broken here. For me, going back to kind of just the Coens in general and what it all means in terms of they've done so many great films, but why is Llewyn Davis the one that I kind of come back to the most? I find it one of their most human films. It is brutally human. And I mean that in the best way. It feels alive, and I just can feel every single thing that Llewyn is going through. And it's a lot of it's caused by he gets in his own way. It isn't all things just happening to him. A Serious Man, great movie. That's more like everything is happening to this guy. Obviously, there's little things that he's done along the way, and he's not inactive. But there's something about Llewyn here where he gets in his own way. He's his own worst enemy. And I mean, this is the thing that just pushes him over. What a shitty guy. What a shitty reveal. and he obviously doesn't. It's interesting to know that the guy, at least in their mind, the guy who owned this place doesn't give a shit about the music. He doesn't, he's just a jerk like the rest of them. And what's interesting about this scene, I always find it very interesting, is that she's, playing real folk music, and Llewyn is attacking kind of the roots of the music that he proclaims to love. He's attacking himself here in a way. And he's going to go all in. And this is his, undoing. At this point, we're sort of witnessing the fallout, the fallout of someone not achieving their dreams. It's so, and he's devastated from everything. He hates folk music. And that's what's so interesting, is that he hates the thing that he loves. The thing that he loves hates him, and now he hates it. He's obviously drunk, but it just has an impact. I love that little phone booth there, just sitting there in that lonely corner. And this movie makes me miss New York, being a New Yorker. I was in California when COVID went down and, came up and stayed, been in California since. And New York is just such a vibrant, it will always be my favorite city. And I love the feeling of this movie, even though some people have said, "Oh, it was so much more vibrant than that." It just feels real to me. New York it gives you an up and a down. It can make you feel terrible, make you feel great. And again, coming back to the Gorfines is really such a sweet thing. And I mean, this little detail about not taking the royalties on Mr. Kennedy. Please, Mr. Kennedy. He took the money because he had to. I love that the Gorfines forgive him. And what a lovely and surprising and human thing that you can argue, but that they actually care about this person and love him. And the cat found its way back, and this is Ulysses. What a wonderful, fun detail. And again, imagine the movie without the cat. And that's all you need. It just gives me chills. That's so wonderful. And that's all they did, was insert this little subplot about a cat getting out and the door locking. And that adds so much. I love that Llewyn finally gets that long fade out. He gets a very good night's sleep. And we're back where we started. And we're realizing that just now. We're repeating some shots from the beginning, and we're realizing, this is. And they bring in this song. Stops the cat. So it's very similar, to where we were, where we started. But of course, he stops the cat that time. So it's not exactly the same as coming back, but very similar. See, those little details, just the incredible journey. And I guess that's the question that we're asking is it the journey or the destination? And that's why that repeated beat there feels the same where he wakes up with the cat. It's a song. It's a repeated chorus. And we're back to where we started the movie with this song. Here we are. And it does feel like a song, and it does feel like this journey, and a song is a journey. I mean, that in the beginning of the movie, that line's a total throwaway. Now that has so much meaning. And what they do here that's very smart is give him one more song. And in my opinion, they save the best for last. You know, doing the song that we've heard before, but in a different way, and doing it solo. Doing the song he used to do with Mike, but doing it by himself. It's so beautiful. And it's just got all the emotion and all the things that he's let go. He's let go of everything at this point. So the performance is pure. He's doing it for the love of it. And I guess that goes back to what I was saying about filmmaking, you know, about going out there and just doing the damn thing. If you love movies, and trust me, if you're listening to this right now, you really love movies. Go and do the thing for no other reason than to simply do it. The only thing that we can do is about a thing that we love is do the thing. Everything else that comes with it, the success, the lack of success, money, lack of money, if you can make it a career or not, those are somewhat out of our control. All we can control is how hard we work. And I just try to work really hard and keep the passion going because I love filmmaking. And I think Llewyn here is, for the first time, really just loving and doing the thing that he loves and not thinking about, well, where's my fame? Where's my fortune? Where's my record deal? Where's this? Where's that? Why am I not the next big thing? He's just doing the thing. So I guess that's a big takeaway for me. It's like, just do the thing you love. Do it with no expectations and hope for the best. But work, I think, begets work. If you just do the work, a lot of the time, work will come along. But just mad props to Oscar Isaac here. He deserves an Oscar. There you go. For this. Oscar deserved an Oscar, I tell you. I don't really buy into awards and whatnot. I don't, they're very political. I don't really understand how they work, but give this man something. He deserves something. And again, we're back to where we started. Now, I mean, this detail about who's on stage here. And the guy who did it, the guy who broke out, he leaves him right there. That could have been Llewyn, but it isn't. And then we're back to this moment. Again, the repeated beats, again, going back to a song, a repeated chorus or verse. You come back to it. The movie feels like a song. It is a song. It is specifically a folk song. And we're back to the image that started it all. You know, the Coens are always image-driven. They sometimes can write. I mean, they've wrote this entire beautiful film around this image, which is a violent one and a terrible one, and yet, you know, but they don't cut around it. They let it play out just the way it played out previously, and that's very purposeful. But then they're going to give you that extra little thing. So now we're in that extra little thing, whichever a song does too. They'll do the repeated chorus, and then they'll give you that nice outro, that nice thing that they give you at the end. And that's what this is. This is that moment of, and with the Bob Dylan playing, knowing that he is folk music. He will define this era. Can't get much worse. You know, but there's some contentment there with Llewyn on his face, and that's all Oscar's performance. I mean, I find that so incredibly moving. I think it's a good time to talk about endings for a little bit over the main crowd. I'll do the mains here and then let you go. For me, an ending is not an ending. You know, like Llewyn's life is going to go on. Who knows if he goes back to being a seaman and still tries his way at music. They end the movie on a feeling, and I've ended a lot of movies similarly, where you end it where emotionally it belongs, and that's exactly where it belongs. And I think it's a perfect ending. Some people would say, oh, it's not complete, but life is never complete. There's only one complete ending, and that's death. And Llewyn doesn't die. He's still here. He's still going on, and you have to find that right moment to end your movie. And I think it's all about emotion and feeling, and I think that's the perfect time to do it, to come back to it. Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to me talk about one of my favorite movies. This was a really fun and interesting kind of experience, and it's a lot. I've done a lot of directors' commentaries before. They're usually they're obviously about my movies, and those are easy to talk about because you're talking about your own movie. But this is not my movie. I want to thank Paul Davidson for asking me to do this. I think it's a really fun idea, and I'm excited to listen to the other filmmakers that are doing this. And I hope you got a few things out of this. And what a great movie. And hey, watch all the Coen Brothers movies again. And if you were inspired, please watch some of my movies. They're all pretty easy and available, either on Netflix or Hulu or on iTunes or what have you. And I would, you can see my journey as a filmmaker from $5,000 movie to, bigger Netflix movies and things like that. And I'm excited to go on and do a big musical and another music movie. So I'm really living in this world right now. I'm living in a world of music and movies, and it's my favorite place to be. So anyway, thanks again, and hopefully we'll see you around.
Indeed we will, Mr. Haley. Indeed we will. I want to thank Brett Haley for walking us through his evolution as a filmmaker and talking us through the Coen Brothers classic, Inside Llewyn Davis. Don't forget, if you're not familiar with Brett's movies, and how could you not be with so many on his list, you can find them on all of your favorite digital platforms and streaming services. I'll See You in My Dreams, The Hero, which is also available on Hulu for streaming, as well as Hearts Beat Loud. And then on Netflix is 2 Netflix originals, as we discussed, All the Bright Places, and the newest, All Together Now, which was on the service as of the end of August. Really fun, sweet film. As always, want to thank all of you for joining us. I'm personally enjoying this journey and this experience through our first season, and there's lots more to come. So please, if you're a fan of the show, if you're a fan of what we're doing, review us on iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, on Instagram. We are Sidetrack Cast on Twitter and the Sidetrack Cast on Instagram. And spread the word. We appreciate it. This is your host, Paul Davidson, saying thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week on The Sidetrack.